And so, the stage was set. The Empire's arrogance had blinded them to the storm that was coming. Humanity wasn't just watching anymore. It was ready to fight. The silent warning. The Galactic Empire prided itself on control. It monitored the farthest corners of its territory, maintaining its dominance through fear and overwhelming power. To the Imperial leaders, humanity's silence was a laughable show of submission. But in the weeks following the strange message that had appeared on their networks, "You mocked us. Run." A creeping unease began to spread. Border planets started reporting odd occurrences. Trade ships vanish without a trace near Earth's sector. Patrol fleets sent to investigate returned empty-handed or didn't return at all. The reports were scattered and inconsistent, but one thing was clear: something was happening in the shadows. The Empire responded as it always did, with force. A fleet of 50 warships was dispatched to Earth's system, led by Admiral Tovak, one of the Empire's most decorated commanders. Tovak was confident, arrogant even. "Let the humans try their tricks," he scoffed. "We'll show them what happens to insects that challenge giants." The fleet entered Earth's region, scanning every corner of space. At first, it seemed empty, lifeless. Tovak grew frustrated. "They're hiding," he barked. "Cowards. They know they can't face us." Then the fleet's sensors picked up something unusual. A faint signal, unlike anything in their databases. It was erratic, pulsing in strange rhythms, almost like a heartbeat. Tovak ordered his ships to converge on the source, eager to uncover the mystery. As the fleet approached the signal, the space around them shifted. One moment, the vast expanse of stars stretched endlessly. The next, darkness fell, as if the light itself had been swallowed. The signal vanished. Confusion spread through the fleet as instruments failed, screens flickered, and communications turned to static. And then they appeared. Human ships materialized out of nowhere, surrounding the fleet in perfect formation. They were sleek and angular, painted in a matte black that seemed to absorb the starlight. No energy signatures, no prior warnings, just sudden, overwhelming presence. Tovak's confidence crumbled as the ships did the unthinkable. They began teleporting, appearing and disappearing unpredictably, like ghosts in the void. The Imperial fleet tried to lock on and fire, but every shot hit empty space. The human ships danced through the chaos, their movements precise and deliberate, as if mocking the Empire's mighty fleet. And then came the voice. It echoed through every Imperial ship, clear and steady, delivered in perfect galactic standard. "You were warned." Panic spread through the fleet. Tovak shouted orders, but his commands were drowned out by the chaos. The human ships didn't fire a single shot. They didn't need to. One by one, the Imperial ships lost power, their systems shutting down as if by an invisible hand. Lights flickered out, weapons froze, engines failed. When the silence became unbearable, one final message played. "You mocked us. You thought we were weak. Now you will see what we can do." And just like that, the human fleet vanished. The Imperial ships drifted, powerless and defenseless, until a distress signal finally reached the Empire. By the time rescue teams arrived, Admiral Tovak was a broken man. He spoke of ships that moved faster than thought, of voices in the dark, of technology far beyond anything the Empire possessed. But the most chilling part of his report was his final statement, delivered with a haunted look in his eyes. "They didn't destroy us because they didn't need to. They wanted us to carry their warning back. They'd wanted us to know they're coming." Back in the Imperial Senate, the Emperor dismissed the report as exaggeration. "Tovak is a fool who let his fear cloud his judgment," he declared. "Humanity has no such technology. This was a fluke, nothing more." But not everyone in the Empire shared the Emperor's confidence. In the weeks that followed, whispers of humanity's newfound power spread through the galaxy. Oppressed species, long under the Empire's boot, began to hope. If humanity could defy the Empire, maybe they could too. The Empire scrambled to reassert control, doubling down on its propaganda. Broadcasts mocked humanity more viciously than ever. They're nothing but clever animals, playing with toys they don't understand. The commentators sneered. But behind closed doors, the imperial military worked feverishly, trying to understand how humanity had achieved what seemed impossible. As for Earth, it remained silent. No broadcasts, no demands, no explanation for the encounter. The human fleet had returned to the shadows, leaving the galaxy to wonder what would come next. But humanity wasn't hiding. It was watching, waiting, and preparing. For humanity knew one thing the Empire did not. The first move was just a warning. The real game was about to begin. Humanity's secret weapon. The Emperor sat on his throne of polished obsidian. His advisors gathered around, their faces tense. The report from Admiral Tovak was fresh in their minds, but none dared mention it aloud. To do so might suggest fear, and fear was a weakness the Empire could not afford to show. Yet the whispers persisted, spreading through the ranks like a virus. Humanity had done the impossible. In the shadowed chambers of Earth's hidden cities, humanity was celebrating, not with parades or public declarations, but with quiet resolve. The test had been a success. Their fleet had proven its capabilities, and the Empire now knew they were no longer invisible. The message was clear. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Earth's greatest advantage lay not in numbers or brute strength, but in its ingenuity. The teleportation technology, codenamed Phantom Drive, was the product of decades of tireless research, experimentation, and sacrifice. The drive allowed ships to bypass the limitations of traditional faster-than-light travel, appearing and disappearing without warning. It was a weapon designed not to fight head-on, but to outmaneuver, to confuse, and to terrify. Humanity's secrecy had been their shield. For years, the world's greatest minds had worked in underground facilities, hidden from prying eyes. They had reverse-engineered alien tech salvaged from long-abandoned crash sites, piecing together the knowledge they needed to leapfrog centuries of development. It wasn't just teleportation. Humanity had also developed advanced AI systems, adaptive shielding, and weapons so precise they could target a single ship in the heart of an enemy fleet without collateral damage. But humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, it was their unity. The Empire had underestimated how adversity could bring a fractured planet together. Old rivalries were set aside, borders dissolved, and resources pooled into one singular goal: survival. While the Empire mocked them, humanity had studied the enemy. Imperial broadcasts, filled with arrogance and disdain, revealed more than they realized. Weak points in their fleet formations, the overconfidence in their AI-driven systems, and their reliance on overwhelming numbers, all of it was cataloged and exploited. Now, with the success of the first strike, humanity prepared for the next phase. They had sent a warning, but a warning wasn't enough. The Empire needed to feel what it meant to be vulnerable. For too long, they had ruled unchecked, crushing entire civilizations under their boots. It was time for humanity to show them what it meant to be defied. In the imperial capital, a meeting of the High Command was underway. The Emperor sat at the head of the table, his expression a mask of calm. Around him, admirals and generals argued over what to do next. "We should strike Earth now, with everything we have," one general barked. "Overwhelm them before they have a chance to retaliate." "And walk into another trap," retorted Admiral Korvik, one of the few voices of caution. "We underestimated them once. We cannot afford to do so again." The Emperor raised a hand, silencing the room. "Earth is a single planet," he said, his voice cold and steady. "No matter what tricks they have, they cannot hope to stand against the might of the Empire. We will crush them, but we will do so methodically. No surprises." The room fell silent. None dared challenge the Emperor directly, but unease lingered. They had all seen the footage of Tovak's fleet, helpless and humiliated. And they knew the Emperor's confidence was built on the assumption that the humans had shown their full hand. They hadn't. The Empire soon deployed another fleet, larger this time, and equipped with experimental countermeasures designed to disrupt the phantom drive. But humanity was already ahead. Their spies, people the Empire never suspected could infiltrate their ranks, had warned them of the fleet's departure. When the Imperial ships arrived near Earth, they found nothing. Empty space stretched before them, silent and still. The fleet's sensors swept the area, but there were no signs of human ships, no energy signatures, no targets to engage. "Where are they?" demanded the fleet commander. And then the lights went out. The fleet's systems shut down simultaneously, plunging the ships into darkness. Crew members scrambled to restore power, but the controls were unresponsive. Alarms blared, but no one could tell what was happening. The humans appeared without warning, their ships illuminated only by the faint glow of distant stars. They moved silently, no weapons fired, no aggression shown. Instead, they broadcast a single message across the entire fleet. "You brought an army. We brought an idea." The Imperial ships were powerless to stop the humans as they began to disassemble key components from their fleet, removing critical systems and then vanishing before the Empire could react. When power was finally restored, the fleet found itself stranded, unable to jump back to Imperial space. It was a humiliation on a scale the Empire had never known. For centuries, they had ruled through fear, their enemies crushed before they could even think of fighting back. Now, they had been bested without a single shot fired. Back on Earth, humanity prepared for the next phase. The galaxy was watching, and humanity knew their actions would have consequences far beyond their conflict with the Empire. But they also knew this: they were ready. The Empire had mocked them. Now, humanity was teaching them the cost of arrogance. The Empire strikes back. The halls of the Imperial Palace trembled with rage. The Emperor, his face a mask of cold fury, paced before his advisors. Reports from the stranded fleet were spread across the table. Footage of powerless ships, crew logs filled with confusion, and that haunting message from the humans: "You brought an army. We brought an idea." The Emperor's pride had been wounded, and pride was the foundation of the Empire's strength. "Enough games," he growled. "Humanity will learn what happens to those who challenge us. Mobilize the Grand Armada." The Grand Armada was more than a fleet. It was the Empire's ultimate weapon. Thousands of ships equipped with the latest technology, entire divisions of soldiers trained for planetary sieges, and war machines capable of reducing worlds to ash. Never before had it been fully deployed, because it had never been necessary. But the Emperor wanted more than victory. He wanted annihilation. On Earth, the atmosphere was tense. Humanity knew what was coming. Their intelligence networks had intercepted fragments of Imperial communications, enough to confirm their worst fears. The Grand Armada was on its way. Billions of lives were at stake, and even with their advanced technology, humanity's fleet was a fraction of the Empire's size. In the heart of Earth's command center, Admiral Cara Lynn stood before her officers, a holographic display of the approaching armada glowing beside her. "They think they're bringing overwhelming force," she said, her voice steady. "But the Empire doesn't understand us. They don't know that this isn't just about Earth. This is about every species they've crushed under their rule." Her words carried weight. For years, humanity had quietly built alliances with other oppressed civilizations. The Empire's enemies were many, but they had been too scattered, too afraid to act. Humanity had given them something they had lost long ago: hope. Messages went out across the galaxy, coded and secure. Resistance cells and rebel groups received a simple signal: the time is now. The Grand Armada arrived in Earth's system like a thunderstorm, its ships stretching across the void in an unbroken wall of metal and firepower. Imperial commanders were confident. They had studied the Phantom Drive, developed countermeasures, and devised strategies to overwhelm humanity's fleet. Victory was inevitable, or so they thought. The first engagement began with an eerie silence. The human fleet didn't meet them head-on. Instead, it danced at the edges of the armada, teleporting in and out of range, delivering precision strikes that dismantled key ships before vanishing. The Empire's countermeasures failed to keep up, their systems unable to predict the humans' movements. Frustration grew among the Imperial ranks. "They're toying with us," shouted one admiral as another ship disappeared from his formation in a flash of light. The human fleet's attacks were surgical, targeting communication hubs, supply carriers, and critical command ships. But the Empire wasn't just relying on brute force. Hidden among the massive warships were experimental drones designed to track and intercept teleporting ships. As the humans struck again, the drones activated, swarming toward the attackers with relentless precision. For the first time, the Phantom Dry ships were challenged. One by one, several human ships were caught mid-teleport, their cloaking fields disrupted. The Empire's fleet pounced, destroying the captured ships in a fiery display. Cheers erupted across the Imperial comm channels. "They bleed," a commander shouted triumphantly. "They can be defeated." But the celebration was short-lived. The humans had anticipated this. As the Empire closed in, new signals lit up across the system. At first, the Imperial commanders thought it was more human reinforcements. But then the transmissions came. Ships of every shape and size, bearing the banners of alien species the Empire had long thought broken. The rebellion had arrived. Small fleets emerged from hyperspace, striking the Empire's flanks. They weren't as advanced as the human ships, but they didn't need to be. Their goal was chaos, and they achieved it. Supply lines were disrupted, key Imperial ships were overwhelmed, and panic spread through the ranks. "This wasn't supposed to happen," an Imperial admiral muttered as his shields failed under a barrage of fire from a coalition fleet. "They're uniting against us." In the chaos, the human fleet struck again, teleporting deep into the heart of the Grand Armada. This time, they targeted the Empire's flagship, a massive, heavily fortified dreadnought known as Eternal Dominion. The ship was the pride of the fleet, its destruction unthinkable. But the humans thought differently. Teleporting in waves, they hit the dreadnought with precision strikes, disabling its engines and shields. Imperial defenders fought valiantly, but the human speed and coordination were unmatched. In a final act of defiance, a human captain broadcast a message to the entire Imperial fleet. "You called us weak. You called us insignificant. Look around you now. The galaxy stands with us, and your time is over." As the Eternal Dominion exploded in a fiery blaze, the tide of the battle shifted irreversibly. The Empire, once invincible, was now on the defensive. In the Imperial Palace, the Emperor watched the footage in stunned silence. His advisors whispered nervously, awaiting his reaction. At last he spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "They think this is over. They think they've won. But they have only awakened the true wrath of the Empire." Even as he spoke, rebellion flared across Imperial territory. Oppressed species rose up, inspired by humanity's defiance. The Empire's resources stretched thin as it scrambled to contain the chaos. On Earth, Admiral Lin stood before her officers, the wreckage of the Grand Armada displayed on the screens around her. "This isn't victory," she said. "Not yet. The Empire will strike back harder than ever. But now, the galaxy knows the truth. They are not invincible, and we will not be broken." The war had only begun. The turning point. The Empire's core worlds, once glittering beacons of control and prosperity, now simmered with unrest. The destruction of the Eternal Dominion and the collapse of the Grand Armada's assault on Earth had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. On the fringes, oppressed species rose in defiance, and even in the heart of Imperial space, whispers of rebellion grew louder. The Emperor's rage was volcanic. He ordered immediate retaliation, deploying a second wave of fleets equipped with experimental weapons and reinforced by legions of elite soldiers. But the Empire was fighting an enemy it didn't fully understand. Humanity's ingenuity and the alliances they had cultivated were proving to be more formidable than the Emperor had ever anticipated. On a remote moon orbiting a dying star, humanity's leaders gathered with representatives from the allied species. The council chamber was stark and utilitarian, its walls illuminated by the faint glow of tactical displays. Admiral Kara Lynn stood at the center, flanked by towering figures from other civilizations. The insectoid hive queen Makora, whose brood swarmed against imperial outposts. General Thilek, a grizzled warrior from the reptilian Drakarn. And Nia Luth, a fugitive human diplomat who had coordinated much of the rebellion's fragile alliance. The Empire is weakening. Admiral Lynn began, her voice steady but cautious. But we cannot mistake their current disarray for defeat. They've survived centuries of rebellion. They will adapt. They will escalate. Hive Queen Nakora clicked her mandibles, her voice a sharp hiss. The Empire's fangs are dull. Their fleets scatter. Their borders collapse. General Thilak growled, his voice deep and rumbling. They still hold the core worlds. If they rally their forces, they can strike us down before we are ready. Nia Luth stepped forward. That's why we need to strike first, she said, her tone resolute. Not just with ships and weapons, but with ideas. The Empire's greatest strength is its control over information. We need to show the galaxy that the Emperor is not a god, that he bleeds like anyone else. The room fell silent. The plan was bold, dangerous, and unprecedented. Humanity had already achieved the unthinkable with the Phantom Drive, but this would require more than technology. It would require trust among species that had spent decades, even centuries, mistrusting each other. Admiral Lynn nodded. We'll show them the truth. And when the Emperor falls, the Empire will crumble. The plan began with a calculated strike on an Imperial stronghold deep within their territory. The stronghold wasn't just a military installation. It housed the Empire's central communication hub, the neural core of their propaganda machine. Destroying it wouldn't just cripple their ability to spread lies. It would open a window for the rebellion to broadcast its own message across the galaxy. The mission was perilous. The stronghold was surrounded by defenses that would make even the most hardened fleets hesitate. But humanity and its allies didn't plan to fight conventionally. Using the Phantom Drive, a small team of ships infiltrated the heart of Imperial space. They carried with them an AI weapon designed to override the stronghold systems, turning the Empire's own network against them. The attack began under the cover of darkness. The human fleet emerged like shadows, teleporting into position before the Imperial sensors could react. The stronghold's defenses activated immediately, turrets firing wildly, but the rebellion's ships were already inside their blind spots. On board the lead ship, Captain Alina Rourke led her crew with precision. "Stay sharp," she commanded. "This isn't just about taking down a fortress. This is about giving the galaxy hope." As the fleet engaged the stronghold's defenses, a second team infiltrated the installation itself. The team was a mix of species, human engineers, Drakarn warriors, and Hive Queen, Makora's elite brood soldiers. They moved swiftly, disabling security systems and planting the AI weapon at the core of the facility. The Empire's forces fought fiercely, but they were unprepared for the speed and coordination of the attack. Within minutes, the AI weapon activated, seizing control of the stronghold's network. Across the galaxy, Imperial broadcasts were interrupted. Screens and holograms once filled with the Emperor's decrees now displayed something new: the faces of the rebellion. Admiral Lynn appeared first, her image transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. "Citizens of the Empire," she began, her voice calm and clear. "You have been told that humanity is weak, that the rebellion is chaos, that the Empire is invincible. These are lies." The broadcast shifted to footage from the recent battles, the destruction of the Eternal Dominion, the Grand Armada's defeat, and the liberation of entire systems by Allied forces. "You are not alone," Lynn continued. For too long, the Empire has ruled through fear, but fear is a weapon that can be turned against its wielder. Together, we can break their chains. The broadcast ended with a chilling message, a shadowy image of the Emperor, distorted and humanized, overlaid with a single word: mortal. The Empire's response was swift and brutal. The Emperor unleashed a wave of retaliation, targeting rebel-held systems with overwhelming force. Entire worlds burned as the Empire sought to reassert its dominance. But something had changed. The rebellion's message spread faster than the Empire could contain it. Across the galaxy, species once paralyzed by fear began to resist. Imperial garrisons faced uprisings. Supply lines were sabotaged. Even within the Empire's ranks, cracks began to form. Soldiers and officers questioned their orders, their loyalty shaken by the truth. In the shadows of the galaxy, humanity and its allies regrouped. The cost of their victory at the stronghold had been high, but the reward was greater than they could have hoped. For the first time, the galaxy had seen the Emperor as he truly was, a man, not a god. And now, the rebellion prepared for its final move. The Emperor's choice. The Imperial Palace, a monolithic fortress of obsidian and steel, stood at the heart of the Empire's capital world, Arcanus Prime. It was a symbol of absolute power, its towers scraping the crimson skies. But now, for the first time in centuries, its walls seemed to tremble, not from an outside attack, but from within. The Emperor sat in his private chamber, bathed in the dim light of holographic projections. They displayed chaos across the galaxy. Rebellions erupting in the outer colonies, imperial fleets retreating from coordinated assaults, and once loyal governors declaring their defiance. The broadcast from the rebels still played on a loop, its final word, mortal, burned into his mind. He had spent decades cultivating an image of invincibility, a myth of divine right. That myth was now crumbling, and the galaxy had seen the truth. The Emperor was not untouchable. His advisors argued endlessly in the adjoining chamber. Some demanded immediate retaliation, calling for the complete destruction of Earth and its allies. Others, more pragmatic, warned that the Empire's resources were stretched too thin. The rebellion had grown too large, too organized. Striking blindly would only accelerate their decline. The Emperor dismissed them all with a wave of his hand. He knew the choice before him was not one of tactics or strategy. It was existential. The Empire was not just a collection of ships and soldiers. It was an idea, a belief in its own supremacy. If that belief was shattered, no amount of firepower could hold it together. For the first time in decades, the Emperor felt something he had long thought impossible: doubt. Far away, on the edge of imperial space, the rebellion's leadership gathered aboard a massive hidden station known as Unity. It was a marvel of engineering, constructed in secret by human and allied forces over the past decade. Its purpose was clear: a staging ground for the final blow against the Empire. Admiral Kara Lynn stood before a massive holomap of the galaxy. Around her were representatives of every allied species, each one carrying the scars of the Empire's rule. The room buzzed with tension as she outlined their next move. "Our strikes have been effective, but the Empire is far from broken," Lynn began, her voice steady. "Their core worlds remain heavily fortified, and their fleets are regrouping. If we allow them time, they will rebuild." Hive Queen and Cora hissed in agreement. "We must strike the heart. We must strike now." General Thelak growled, his massive claws digging into the table. "The capital world is a fortress. Even with your human tricks, we will..." When the strike team burst into the room, he didn't resist. He simply sat there, staring at them with a mix of anger and resignation. "You think taking me will save you," he said, "but you cannot kill an idea." Captain Rourke stepped forward, her weapon lowered. "No," she said, "but we can show the galaxy that even the strongest ideas can fall." As the Emperor was taken into custody, the galaxy watched, their screens filled with the image of the once untouchable ruler brought low. The rebellion's message was clear: The age of the Empire was over. Humanity's victory. The galaxy held its breath. From the desolate moons of the outer rim to the glittering spires of once loyal imperial worlds, the broadcast rippled through space like a shockwave. The image of the Emperor, no longer shrouded in myth, no longer untouchable, beamed across every screen. He sat on his knees in a cold, sterile room aboard the Rebellion's flagship, his ornate armor stripped away, his eyes hollow. "This is your Emperor," Admiral Cara Lynn's voice declared, steady and resolute. "This is the man who ruled through fear, who crushed countless worlds, who told you he was invincible. Look at him now. He is no god. He is no legend. He is just a man." The broadcast ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. For centuries, the Emperor's image had symbolized power, control, and the unbreakable will of the Empire. Now it symbolized its fragility. On Earth, celebrations erupted. The streets were filled with people cheering, embracing, and crying. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had not only defied the Empire, but dismantled the myth that held it together. And they had done it not alone, but as part of a coalition that spanned the stars. Admiral Lynn stood in the control room aboard Unity, watching the display of their forces across the galaxy. Reports flooded in, Imperial garrisons surrendering without a fight, warlords declaring independence, and entire fleets abandoning their posts. The Empire's infrastructure was collapsing under its own weight. Lynn turned to Nia Luth, the human diplomat who had helped forge the Rebellion's alliances. "It's not over," she said. "This isn't just about tearing down the Empire. Now we have to build something better." Back on Arcanus Prime, chaos reigned. Without the Emperor, the Imperial Senate dissolved into infighting. Governors turned on each other, scrambling for power. Some attempted to declare themselves the new ruler of the galaxy, but their claims fell on deaf ears. The rebellion's message had shattered the illusion of the Empire's unity. Humanity and its allies seized this moment. Coalition forces moved swiftly to secure key systems, offering protection to worlds that declared their independence. The message was clear. The galaxy would no longer bow to a single throne. The trial of the Emperor was held on an unremarkable moon in neutral space. Representatives from every species the Empire had oppressed were invited to witness the proceedings. The courtroom was a stark contrast to the grandeur the Emperor once enjoyed. No golden thrones, no cheering crowds, just a plain room filled with those he had wronged. The charges were read: genocide, enslavement, suppression of freedom. The list went on for hours, detailing centuries of atrocities. The Emperor sat silently, offering no defense. He didn't plead for mercy or deny his actions. His gaze remained fixed on the floor, as if he had already accepted his fate. When the sentence was announced, life imprisonment in an isolated facility, there was no applause. The galaxy didn't need his death. His defeat, his fall from power, was punishment enough. Months later, the galaxy stood on the precipice of a new era. The coalition convened a summit to decide the future of interstellar governance. It was a messy, chaotic process. Species that had never worked together argued and debated fiercely. Some wanted to establish a new central government, while others demanded full independence. Admiral Lynn attended the summit but remained mostly silent. Humanity's role had always been as a catalyst, not a ruler. As the debates raged on, she took solace in the fact that the galaxy was finally having the conversations it needed to have. In the end, the coalition agreed on a framework, a council of equal representation, where no single species could dominate. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The planet, once mocked as insignificant, now stood as a symbol of defiance and resilience. But humanity knew better than to let its guard down. The scars of the war were still fresh, and the galaxy's future was far from certain. Admiral Lynn stood on a hill overlooking the rebuilt United Earth Command headquarters. Beside her was Captain Alina Rourke, the hero who had captured the Emperor. They watched as the first human starship bearing the coalition's new emblem, a symbol of unity and hope, ascended into the sky. "Do you think it'll last?" Rourke asked. Lynn didn't answer immediately. She looked up at the stars, her expression thoughtful. "I don't know," she said finally. "But for the first time, we have a chance, and that's more than we've ever had before." Rourke smirked. Typical humans, always punching above their weight. Lynn chuckled softly. "It's what we're good at." Far from the celebrations, on a distant, barren world, a single cell stood at the edge of a gray cliff overlooking an endless ocean. Inside sat the former emperor, his face weathered, his gaze empty. He had no audience, no throne, no empire. But even in his solitude, he whispered a single, chilling promise to the wind. "This isn't the end. Empires never truly die. They only sleep." And so, as the galaxy embraced its newfound freedom, shadows lingered on the horizon. The war was over, but the story was far from finished.